Recently, we sent a correspondent and a producer to a building in this liberal bastion where we were going to tape an interview. The producer, white, dressed in what could only be described as homeless elf attire, and a pretty strong 5 o'clock from the previous week's shadow, strode confidently into the building, preceding our humble correspondent, a gentleman of color, dressed resplendently in a tailored suit. Who do you think was stopped? Let me give you a hint, the black guy. And that happens all the time, all of it. Race is there, and it is a constant. You're tired of hearing about it? Imagine how exhausting it is living it.
The events of Ferguson, Missouri are going to force changes in America. On that, there is no doubt. From how law enforcement works with the people in their community, how the community needs to work with law enforcement, and how both sides need to temper their emotions and bring that existence in line with the law. One other key point to Ferguson: groups energizing black voters to become more involved in choosing their leader, a process that seems to be common sense, but may also be perverted by those seeking to line their own pockets. Welcome to MidPoint. Spokesman for TeaParty.org, also host and political analyst on the WAAR radio network, Michael Dozier, and liberal commentator, Democratic strategist, and regular contributor to Forbes.com, TJ Walker. Gentlemen, thanks so much both for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
TJ, I'm going to begin with you. There is indeed a Democratic move to rally the black vote across America, not just in Ferguson, Missouri, but across America, which leads to a very simple question. Why don't black Americans vote? Why does it need an energizing factor, if you will, when simply to a lot of people, they should be voting for the decades past to help create change?
I agree with you. Black people should vote. White people should vote. Everybody should vote. That's why I think we should all be encouraging Jesse Jackson and others who are going to Ferguson and trying to line up people to vote.
But why don't they vote now?
That's why I think it's disgusting to a lot of people to see the Republican Party executive director of that state claim that it's disgusting to see people being registered to vote there near a memorial for the young black man who was killed there. That's why a lot of that's why a lot of black people think that Republicans are racist and why they don't vote for Republicans.
But wait a minute, answer the question though, if you would please. Why is it that only 12% of registered voters, black voters, took part in the last municipal election in that city? And nationally, there are so few numbers. Why do black people not vote?
They should vote more.
But why don't they?
I don't know. I'm not a black person, Ed. You should ask them. Why does anyone not vote? Because they somehow don't feel it's worth their time. Now, in some cases, in the black community, many can't afford a car, therefore they don't have a driver's license, therefore they don't have ID to actually vote. And that's why they get very upset when Republican legislatures around the country pass these laws to fight so-called fraud at polls, but really make it harder for poor people to vote. Now, just the other day, I went to the United Nations. I forgot my driver's license. You know what? It was no problem for me. I happen to have a passport on me. Most poor people, white or black in America, don't have a passport.
All right.
Many of them don't have a driver's license. If you're really concerned about getting more black people to vote, well, why don't we make it easier to vote? Why don't we make it as easy to vote as it is to have a handgun?
All right, let's go ahead and then let's turn to the other side. Michael Dozier, then answer the question then, please. Why don't black people vote? Why do they vote in such small numbers?
A lot of black people are disinterested in what's going on, and until something happens in their community, that's when they come out and actually vote. You saw when this president, when he ran for his first election in 2008, you saw a lot of enthusiasm in the black neighborhoods and the black communities, and they came out and voted. However, that was only around 13%, I believe. So it's a lot to do with educating the community on what their vote actually goes for and how they can come out. But can I touch upon that voter ID thing?
Please.
You know, the Democrats just passed a law several years ago called Obamacare. And under Obamacare, you need an ID to see your provider. So don't blame this on the Republicans or the GOP. It has to do with rights. And if you're voting fraudulently for somebody else, or somebody else has taken your vote, then IDs need to be given, and they work.
Why is it, knowing full well that taking part in the political process can create change, not necessarily always will, but can create change, then, TJ, why are African American voters disinterested? What will it take for them to get them interested?
For the record, disinterested means unbiased. You do realize that, don't you?
According to what you're saying, please continue.
Okay. You can say they're uninterested, but disinterested is what you want a judge to be. You know, there's actually no evidence to suggest once you control for income that blacks vote less than poor white people do. So you have to take that into consideration. But I agree, I would like a higher vote tax. I would love to see us require voting, yet conservatives and Republicans are the first ones to say, oh my gosh, you can't do that. It's conservatives are always so excited about any roadblock to make it harder for someone to get a gun, and yet every single time when Democrats try to have same-day registration, for example, in states to vote, you see conservatives say, oh my gosh, you can't do that. That would be awful.
Okay, let's stay off gun control for the moment because we're not quite there. I want to go ahead because I know Michael had something to say. I heard him want to answer. Michael, again, why disinterested? And then, of course, I know you wanted to answer something from TJ.
Because of education, because they do not know what their vote counts for. A lot of black people, and I'm black, by the way, so I can answer this. A lot of black people, they're not aware what's going on in their community, and they don't know how to change it, and they don't realize that by voting, they can change what's happening in their community. You know, Ben Carson, who is a great role model that the mainstream media, they don't want to listen to anything that he says. But he came out during this Ferguson issue and he said the same exact thing. We need to get out and vote. We need to educate the black community on why their vote counts. That's important, and that's what we need to get out, and that's when you'll see a change.
Michael, would you agree with some people who say that when they look at the Al Sharptons and the Jesse Jacksons of the world, there are even people in the black community who will say that they are there as more as opportunists than really to be able to make any substantive change? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, look at what's happening in the inner cities today.
But hold on.
Hold on a sec, TJ. Let Michael finish, please. Go ahead, Mike.
Look what's happening in the inner cities today. You know, in Chicago, you have murders. Chicago is called the murder capital of the United States. Why? Over 500 youths are killed every year in Chicago. You don't see Al Sharpton. You don't see Jesse Jackson. They only show up when it benefits them. That's it.
All right, TJ, go ahead.
The biggest race hustlers in America are Karl Rove, Rush Limbaugh, and Glenn Beck. They are the ones, in your opinion, certainly. They are the ones profiting wildly off of dividing the races. They make, any one of them makes more money in 1 week than Al Sharpton makes in a year.
Hold on one sec, Mike. Hold on one sec. TJ, 30 seconds. Finish your thought.
I'm saying any one of those three race charlatans, they make more money in 1 week than Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson make in a year.
All right, Mike, answer back.
And you see Jesse Jackson, he's an extortionist along with Al Sharpton. But, you know, people are waking up to the fact that they are. You see, recently when Jesse Jackson went to Ferguson, he was asked to leave. Why? Because he wanted them to donate money to his cause. What is his cause? No one ever knows, you know, but they come into these situations and they leave it burning afterwards, and then they're not to blame anymore. That's when people have to come in. But when you have real people who want change, when you have real people who want to work with the police and who say that, yes, the police should be a part of the community, that's true. And the police, they shouldn't come in with these heavy arms that and looking like a military police. No, they shouldn't. And the people should vote. There's nothing wrong with voting. Voting was given to us as a right. But when you have extortionists that come in and they excite the crowd and do what they do, this is what you end up with.
Okay, TJ, 20 seconds, last thought.
Glenn Beck doesn't excite a crowd. He's a very exciting crowd. You know, it's highly specious here, this idea that someone is an extortionist and a money grubber just because they support Democrats. I mean, I think that's really the problem with a lot of conservative media. They don't have any respect. They don't have any, I didn't interrupt you, sir. They don't have any respect.
You got 5 seconds.
For an actual democracy where competing ideas get to compete. Everyone is discredited as somehow illegitimate.
All right, gentlemen, that's going to have to be the last word. TJ Williams, Michael Dozier, pleasure to have you both. We'll do it again very soon. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, later on this hour, the time is coming when you will no longer be able to do much of anything in your car without someone knowing about it, and that might be a good thing. MidPoint continues.